Welcome to the Fran Snyder Podcast, where I talk to artists and music fans to explore how music connects us through great stories and experiences. Brought to you by the Listening Room Network. Today's guest, Rod Abernethy. How are you today?
I'm great.
Yeah?
Fran. It's a sunny day here in the Carolinas, so I'm doing really well today.
Super. You're a fantastic singer-songwriter. It was really fun to catch you play at the last conference I saw you. Curious, I guess, where in the Carolinas are you, and how did you get there? Let's start with geography and history.
Oh my, how did I get here? I'm in the Piedmont in the Carolinas. I'm in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill Triangle area.
Okay.
I grew up in Western North Carolina in the foothills, and I've always lived in North Carolina. So went to school in Chapel Hill, got a music degree, joined rock bands, and that's when it's been downhill ever since.
Yeah. So what keeps you there? Is it the oyster roasts or?
Actually, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill is a really special area. It's politically active. The arts have always been great here. It's had an influx of people that come into RDU area worldwide. It's a really special area. So in the 80s, there was a strong music scene, a strong creative scene. They were making movies in Wilmington. There were a lot of movies that were made down there. I just decided to stay here. I had many opportunities to move out west. Almost did, but I always got gigs and was able to stay here.
Nice. Moving out west gives me the idea that might have had to do with all the production and writing work that you were doing for movies and games. Writing music for television and movies and other outlets is, I think, for a lot of us singer-songwriters, unless you really explore the space, it really feels like a bit of a mystery. Give me an idea of how you landed in that field. Was it accidental? Was it on purpose?
I don't want to make it too long of a story, but when I got out of college, I was a folk singer. Mm-hmm. I put out my own LP, my vinyl LP. People would say, what did it sound like? I said, it sounded kind of like Jesse Winchester meets Leo Kottke. I was doing 12-string stuff, and then I got asked to join a rock band. Their name was Arrogance, and we landed some record deals. One of them was with Warner Brothers, and we put out our record, which didn't do that well. And I played a little bit long after that. And then I was asked to manage a recording studio here in Raleigh, a 24-track studio.
Okay. And
back in the mid-'80s, that was a pretty big deal to have a studio. So that allowed me to start composing. And I sort of got out. I put my acoustic guitar in the closet, so to speak.
Yeah.
And before I did that, I don't know if you've ever heard of Star Search.
Oh, yeah.
I was on Star Search, and I lost on Star Search in front of millions of people. And that was my kind of like last straw. I went, okay, I'm going to go back home, and I'm going to start composing and running the studio. And it was a good thing. I did a lot of commercials. I did a lot of what they call corporate film, where you do soundtracks for a lot of corporate stuff. I got into independent film. And then lo and behold, I got into video games. And once I got into video games, it was kind of a brand new market, early 2000s for music.
Yeah.
And that opened the door. I won Video Game Soundtrack of the Year at the Game Developers Conference. This was around 2003, 2004, which is an eternity ago now.
Yeah.
But that opened the gates, and since then I've done about 75 video games, and that also opened the door to do licensed music, which I've got a lot of licensed music out there. have been doing that for years. And by that, I mean music that's used in commercials and film and TV. So I did all that over the years and didn't ever think I would start playing again.
Right. So let me ask you briefly, when we think of somebody who writes music for video games or TV or scores of any kind, we usually think of a keyboard player, and I, associate you pretty strongly with the guitar. So is piano a big factor in the music that you're creating, or are you working around that?
Surprisingly enough, I was a piano major at school.
Okay.
But I'm not a great pianist. I'm really not. I think you'll find that you think of pianists in doing computer music because that's the tool we use to enter our music into the computer. And tons and tons of guitarists do the same thing. I mean, they can play piano, they can get around, but anyone if you sit in front of what I call a digital audio workstation, which is what everybody has now, could be GarageBand. The easiest way to put in those notes is on a keyboard. Yeah. So that's probably where you're coming from.
Gotcha. And then in terms of the stuff that the licensed music, is that something that you pursue actively, or is there like you have an agent or a service where you just keep uploading usable audio?
I over the years, I have pursued it with an agent and personally.
Yeah.
I've had an agent in LA for a long time. But that agent usually doesn't pursue licensed music. That agent is trying to get more jobs in film and video games. But I've been lucky enough to have made contacts with production companies in LA and London. Right now, I just finished a package for a company. They're called West One Music. Mm-hmm. You can go to their website, and it's like anything. You go to their website, directors, editors go to their website and they listen to music and they go down the line and say, oh, that'll work.
Right.
So I've been able to establish a relationship with them, but it's only because I've been doing it for so long. If I were brand new trying to do it right now, it would be a task because there are a lot of people trying to do the same thing, but you can do it. It's almost like anything else. You have to kind of get your music together. You got to get it in a package to present to somebody, and then you send it to these people and say, are you interested in licensing this?
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. You just don't know where it's going to land. And about 6 years ago, I was looking at my ASCAP. I'm on ASCAP and BMI. I looked on my list and one of my tracks landed in SpongeBob SquarePants. That's how crazy this business is.
Yeah.
That's something I don't go on a folk stage and say, hey, one of my tunes is on SpongeBob. But, it's a crazy business. And my point is, don't say no to anything. Yeah. You never know what's going to happen or where it's going to land.
Super. So what was the trigger that gave you the, inspiration, courage, or conviction to go back to performing live and even touring?
It was over a period of about a week. I did pick up my acoustic guitar, and I'll show you which one. Hold on.
All right.
It's this acoustic guitar, and it's a 1954 J200.
Nice.
And I would pick this Gibson up, once a month and start playing on it. And about, I guess it was 6 years ago, I started playing, and it just dawned on me, like, if I don't start playing again now, I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. I need to do it. And I wanted to play again. And then I got up some songs, some cover songs like Dylan and Leo Kottke on my 12-string. And I booked a night at a local club. It was like my folk night, and I would invite people to play. And I kind of had a residency downtown. And after doing that and having people tell me, Rod, you ought to start playing again, I just made an effort to do it. And then I thought, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do an album. I'm going to go to Folk Alliance because I want to. It wasn't that I was trying to compete with anybody. I just wanted to play. I just I had to do it. It was in my DNA to do this.
And so I met your lovely wife at Folk Alliance. Was that a scary decision for her when you decided to do this? was she fully on board, or?
Well, she was. She always has been.
Yeah.
And I think she knew this was coming. And I haven't given up studio work, but I don't do as much anymore because I'm playing.
Yeah.
And I'm doing my new album. I'm doing Kickstarter right now. That's what I'm doing, is doing Kickstarter for my new album. I'm working on it 24/7. She married a musician, and do I need to go into spouses who marry musicians? I mean, you know, they are the bravest of the brave.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I love her dearly, and I wouldn't be talking to you right now if it weren't for my wife, Suzanne. She's allowed me the freedom to do all this.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You mentioned, you know, in terms of silver linings, you know, during this pandemic, it's been really one of the highlights of this podcast series for me is learning all the positive stuff that's actually coming out of this.
It's been amazing.
Seems to be downtime.
I've learned how, well, I think I have, but Premiere Pro, video editing, I've learned how to use it. And I've done videos like My Mom's Guitar series that I did on YouTube. I was able to take time and still have, you know, you've got time. So I learned Premiere Pro. I learned how to multi-camera edit. I put 2 iPhones out in the camera that you're looking at now and learned how to go back and forth. And, you know, on YouTube, there's instructional videos on anything, on how to pick your teeth. So it's one of the silver linings of this whole quarantine has been hunker down, learn something new, and your family going, will you come out of your room? We don't know who you are anymore, because I'm in the room on the computer learning stuff.
Yeah, well, before we hit record, I was telling Rod I was admiring the lens that he's got, because it reminds me of old school film, where, you know, the background behind you is blurry and you look like razor sharp up front, and that's something that was lost in the VHS digital age, where basically digital cameras really kind of bring everything into focus, the entire frame. Yeah. So it's kind of cool to see. That's the first time I've seen that doing an interview or a Zoom call where you've got that really nice, sharp video. So that's kind of fun.
Anyone can really do this if they spend enough time away from their family, locked in a room. Yeah.
That's the secret to life right there.
Yeah.
Lock yourself away for periods of time.
Yeah.
You also mentioned you have a Zoom chat with a bunch of musicians and peers. Is that something you found or something you helped put together?
You know, that has been that's been the golden egg of this whole quarantine pandemic for me. And I'll admit I stole the idea from Joe Crookston. Yeah. Because I heard Joe was doing kind of a group of Zoom chats right the first few weeks of quarantine. And I thought, how cool is that? And then I thought, man, there are a lot of people that I've met at Folk Alliance and musician friends of mine that aren't in Folk Alliance, but we need to talk to each other. We just need to talk about it. We need to talk about being alone, streaming online. Will we ever play in front of people again? People we know who got COVID-19, or just the joys of what they're doing. So I started emailing people. It started out with about 6 people, and I've got about 60 people on the list, but you know, 60 people don't show up every week. I get maybe 12 people, but it's such a great group, and there are peer groups going on everywhere now with Zoom. I mean, we need that. And I will say Zoom has allowed us to connect like that. And it's open. If people want to be on this, you know, chat group, sure, email me and I'll put you on the chat. It's very casual, and we just have joys and concerns, and we just talk.
Nice. Well, yeah. When I post this interview, I'll put the link to your Kickstarter and the link to your group if you want.
Awesome.
in there. And one of the things that's been hitting me left and right lately, I'm not a big country music fan, but Chris Stapleton keeps showing up on my radar, and it's happened twice this week. And then in your notes, I asked you what some of your favorite acts that are playing right now, and you mentioned Chris Stapleton. So tell me about new country at its best. For those like me who struggle with that genre, tell me what we're missing.
Oh, I'm no expert. I mean, honestly, I'm listening to Chris Stapleton and then Rage Against the Machine and then John Coltrane in the same hour.
Okay.
And then it'll be Mozart in the afternoon. So my musical listening habits are really broad, but when I heard Whiskey and You from Chris Stapleton, it kind of blew me away.
Yeah.
The songwriting and just the delivery, and he's got a great voice too.
Mm-hmm.
He's this guy that didn't look to me corporate country. I don't know. And the same with Jason Isbell. I'm a total Jason Isbell fan.
Yeah.
Jason crosses a lot of I think he's more of a folk than he is country.
Yeah.
I just think he's an incredible folk artist. People don't really think of Jason as a folk artist. And I've seen him live many times. But new country, I don't know, man. Whatever works.
Yeah.
Whatever the audience wants to hear. I've worked in a lot of different genres, and I've learned that you can never really predict your audience. If you want to try something new, try it.
Yeah.
Just try it. I know that's easier said than done.
Well, for me, the whole country thing, like I really early on, I had trouble just connecting or resonating with traditional folk, old time country. As I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate, the classics. I like to think that I'm at a point in my life where I just recognize quality when I hear it. And, a great song is a great song, regardless of the genre. But the whole, the modern country thing that started to happen. And then I guess for me, the idea was that country was pushed into the mainstream again. And I started hearing it everywhere when I really wasn't craving it. So it kind of created a little pushback. And then, what is it now? 10 years ago, country music seems to have taken on the Jimmy Buffett vibe. Let's all, toes in the sand, beer in my hand, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And some of that music, again, is great. Production's great. The entertainment value's great, all that kind of thing. But there's just an inauthenticity to it. The writing is tight. Like these are professional singer-songwriters, 3 of them sitting in a room and, hashing it out and putting 5-6 decades of experience into this one song. But for me, like thematically and instrumentally, there's just little bits of me that just kind of get pushed back.
Well, that's the way it is. I mean, in any genre, you've got, the round table corporate writers, and I think we all kind of enjoy that. I mean, it's like cotton candy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fun. But for me, I prefer to hear people who, take B.J. Barham and American Aquarium. I mean, B.J.'s an incredible songwriter. Mm-hmm. That's more of what I really want to listen to. Mm-hmm. Jason Isbell is another one. I feel like I'm making a connection with that one person,
right,
and their experience. And to me, folk, that's what folk is all about, is, the one-to-one kind of connection. Mm-hmm. You might have heard that story before. You might have heard that story 100 times, but not from that person, right, not from that point of view.
And that's what I hear about Chris Stapleton, is that there is an authenticity that people feel to what he does. It doesn't feel like.
And he was a songwriter for many years for other people.
Yeah.
So for him to finally emerge, it's even sweeter, the success he's got.
So
there are other artists like him.
Yeah. So you and I have mostly bumped into each other at music conferences. I'm curious, for you, what are the unexpected benefits of attending a conference? So, most often, especially for a new artist, you're going to your first folk alliance or even a regional one or whatever. And man, you're hoping you're going to meet some venues and you're hoping you're going to get some gigs. And most often, it's not so much the gatekeepers that make things happen for you. It's,
I'll tell you,
go ahead.
One of the first best things that ever happened, for those of you who are familiar with the folk conferences around like NERFA, Farm, SWERFA, SURFA, my first NERFA in Stanford.
And that's Northeast Regional Folk Alliance.
Northeast, yeah.
Yeah.
And Alan Rowoth has the Big Orange Tarp. I'm sure you've heard of that. And these things go on at 2 and 3 in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I was playing, I think it was my first Big Orange Tarp, and there were maybe 4 people in the room. It was about 2:30. You're exhausted. You might have played 3 showcases already that night. But you go in and you play, and it's kind of like boot camp, these things. You just go do it.
Yeah.
And I played, and then the next morning, Carrie Estrin, who I work with a lot, said, Rich Warren heard you last night at Big Orange Tarp. He wants you to play Folk Stage in Chicago.
Nice.
And I'm like, honestly, at that point, who's Rich? And said, Rich, those guys in folk. And he heard you and he likes you and he wants you to play. And she said, this was worth your whole year right here. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that happens at Folk Alliance. And when you least expect it, you're not asking for it. It comes to you. And I've told people many, many times in music, and some people say, well, how do I want to get into music. What's my path? How do I get there? And I say, choose a path, choose something. You need to have a direction where you're going, but it's these side roads that you might be passing. That's where your opportunities are coming.
Yeah.
So be focused, but but pay attention to what these side things are. And that's always worked for me.
I'll tell you the opposite story of what you just shared. I was visiting someone else's showcase room, probably 11:30 at night. It was actually a good time slot for Folk Alliance Guerrilla Showcases, 11:30 midnight. And this man walks in just dressed to the nines, doing like really old school blues, Delta blues stuff. But really was not aware of what he was walking into. And he's, literally playing in someone's hotel room where the bed's been removed and a couple of chairs put in. And actually the bed wasn't even removed back then. It was just, a couple chairs added to the furniture. And he's grumbling the whole time that he's setting up and, grabbing his chair. And there's only, besides me, there's 2 guys in the room that are there to listen. And they're sitting on the edge of the bed, 4 feet from him as he's grumbling about this stupid gig that his agent got him into. Mm-hmm. And proceeds to play a song and complain some more and play another song and complain some more. And just like, what am I doing here? So the thing passes, he leaves, and I wind up talking to the 2 guys that were sitting at the edge of the bed. I'm just curious who these guys were. Turned out they were booking a huge festival up in Canada, and they had come there specifically to hear that guy. And he proceeded to totally make an ass of himself, while these 2 guys were happy to sit in an abandoned hotel room to just hear what he wants to do for 20 minutes. And he totally blew that opportunity. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's the thing. You never know who that 1 or 2 people are.
You never know. You're exactly right. And one thing that Folk Alliance and all those hotel rooms taught me was you're on.
Yeah.
You're on. Even if nobody's in the room, you're playing for your host.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to just, I'm not saying you got to put on a big show every time.
Yeah.
But you've got to make people want to be in the room, or
Mm-hmm.
at least make them comfortable. And another time I was doing a new song about my dad. It's called My Father's Quiet Man. So on the new album, I thought, this song's not going to work. I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I played it, and the response I got from the room was like, oh my God, that's what Folk Alliance is all about.
Mm-hmm.
Going and showcasing. And I'm sorry, I'll try not to talk too much, but another quick story. I warm up in the hallways at all the Folk Alliance. You'll hear me in a stairway.
Yeah.
I love that. And these 3 girls were walking up the steps, and they really, they're not my demographic, I don't think. They're in their early 20s. And they stopped and listened to me while I was singing. And they went, wow, I really like you. Where are you playing? I went, I'm playing in an hour at so-and-so.
Yeah.
They showed up.
Nice.
And that, again, I'm sorry, I'm just talking about Folk Alliance so much, but there's so many good experiences.
Yeah.
It pains me that we're not there right now.
If you are enjoying this podcast, can you pause for a moment to like, review, and subscribe? Please help the world discover our music community and the wonderful artists we support. Your feedback makes a difference. So tell me about, how did you discover house concerts? How have they changed the way you approach connecting with an audience live?
That's a really good question. And there are still a lot of people, musician friends of mine, that have no idea what a house concert is. Or they think that it's, we're having a cookout tonight. Will you play a couple of songs while we make hamburgers? I'm like, you need to experience it. One thing about your organization, which was the first one that I went to online and went, wow, this is a real thing. It's incredible. Somebody's really taking advantage of the opportunity. And I went to my first house concert about 15 years ago with a friend. And it was about 20 people in a house, and I can't remember the artist. It's funny. But that was my exposure. And since then, fast forward about 15 years, I did one of my first house concerts in Chapel Hill. And it kind of blew my mind, because you can kind of customize your own audience with the help of a host. You have a captive audience who wants to be there. They want to hear you. And they can be 10 people, it can be 40 people, but it's exactly what you want. You connect with people, you talk to people, you get to know them, they get to know you. I just think it's great. It's some of my favorite things that I've done. In fact, one of the shows for Listening Room, there was this place in Massachusetts, I won't say what it is, but I went to this house. It was a really tiny house. And I thought, oh my, are we going to play? Where am I going to play? And downstairs, this guy had taken his whole basement and turned it into a nightclub situation, like a venue with a theater, and he had a stage, he had lights, he had a sound system. I couldn't believe it. And if you looked at the house, you'd never know it. And lo and behold, 25 people showed up, and we had a great night.
It's amazing how some people, pick it up as a hobby and so fall in love with it. It inspires them to make these radical changes in their lives. I've seen people sell their houses so that they could get a house that's better for house concerts. Yeah. One couple in Texas sold their house, bought a bigger property, and built an amphitheater in their backyard. They just went.
They love it.
Yeah. And it's like, this is what we do. This is it. This is us. And it just takes over their lives. It's a wonderful, house concerts are the coolest virus I know.
I know. And you were, to me, I think you were the one who broke the ground
Oh,
on
thanks.
making it happen. And you're also a great performer too. So you know
Thank you.
what people want on both sides, performer
Well,
and
I
audience.
yeah, I came at it as an artist, and my discovery of house concerts. I just talked a friend into doing one. It was one of those things that these folky friends of mine kept talking about, but I'd never went to one. I'd never seen one or hosted one or played one. I just took what I'd gathered, and I told a friend of mine. I said, "Hey, I've got a Saturday night off in DC. I always crash at your place when I come through. Why don't we do a concert?" And he loved the idea, and it just totally created the spark in my life. And then this was the early 2000s when there wasn't really a good place to get information about house concerts. And so I was kind of serving my own need as I was searching on Google for house concerts, kept finding all these dead ends. And I was like, somebody needs to fix this. I wish somebody would fix this. So eventually.
Then you got people like Rupert Waits, who totally kills it. I'm amazed. I mean, he's totally taken advantage of that. And I have so much respect for him because he does it so well.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that as soon as he found it, he said, "Okay, this is my vehicle. This works for me. People respond to me better in this type of atmosphere than in any other type of atmosphere I play."
Well,
and he just said, "I'm just going 100% for this."
Let me turn this on you. How do you see it progressing in the future? House concerts. What vision have you got for us?
So one of the things that I think we have to keep in mind is, we've been fortunate to not really have a pandemic in many, many decades. Some people say we had one in the 60s or whatever, but 1918 is the Spanish flu that most people refer to. But as interconnected as this world is, with all the advances and experimentation going on in biology, and I think that we have to at least hold the idea in our mind that pandemics may be a recurring theme in the next decades. Mm-hmm. This may not be the only one that we face in the next 5 or 10 years. So we have to sort of rebuild or build a more robust infrastructure for this kind of stuff. And I think all the lessons that we're learning now, which are lessons that Asia learned with the bird flu and H1N1. And so they were better prepared this time than we were. But I see house concerts being more vital than ever on the tail end of this because so many commercial places are not going to survive.
Right.
So many of them have folded already. And so for artists who want to tour, house concerts have been this wonderful opportunity for a long time, but now I think they're going to be even more important than ever. But as you know, touring, even under the best of circumstances, is a hazardous, uncertain undertaking. And on top of pandemics, you have wildfires and hailstorms and snowstorms. You have all these kinds of things, even clubs burning down purposely or on accident. There's all these things that can really mess up a tour, which is often set up to be barely profitable from the start. Yeah. So I think with the addition of pandemics and, there's not going to be an all clear sign. It's just going to gradually get better, and we'll get probably, some flare-ups here and there. And I think that artists are going to be much more judicious about how they tour, and they're not going to be as inspired to do barely profitable touring anymore. Things that put them at risk, especially now that they've been forced to figure out other ways to make money, whether it's live streaming or some side hustle that they had. So what we want to do, what I want the Listening Room Network to do as an answer to that, and I've already sort of planted the seeds for it, and that is to inspire our hosts and venues to work together so that instead of sending 20, 30 emails out to get one gig, when you do get that one gig, it can quickly turn into 3, 4, or 5. Yeah. Because we'll have these point people, these more industrious, more inspired, more free hosts who want to be the glue of the network, who will collaborate with other venues in the region. So when you get booked at a certain show in Manhattan, Kansas, she has affiliations with 10 other venues, 3 or 4 of them who are likely to block book with her on any particular show. So that's really going to be the focus of my efforts over the next 6 months, is creating these pockets around the country and around the world where hosts and venues are going to work together actively, so that, again, touring becomes less risky. You get more shows, fewer gaps in your schedule, and maybe a little, maybe a fewer hours, you know, instead of booking a tour over a period of 6 weeks, maybe it'll come faster for you. So that's my effort. The challenge that we have is that, because there's a wonderful organization in Canada called Home Roots. So they started out from the very beginning doing these touring circuits. So if you join their organization as a host, they tell you who's coming and when. There's a very centralized program, which is wonderful for the artist, because if you get booked by Home Roots, you get 12 shows in 14 days, and that's a great, great deal. But our challenge is that we've been at this for as long, for 15 years, telling hosts, you can have whoever you want, whenever you want. We just want to support you. If you book people on our network, that's great, but you can book anybody you want.
Yeah.
So we've been giving our hosts all this freedom and encouraging them to do whatever they want. And now to tell them, okay, here's a new program. We don't want you to book exactly who you want in the future, totally at your leisure. We want you to collaborate with other people. So that's going to be like herding cats to some extent. So we're going to have to go after the hosts who are most inspired by the idea. But I do believe that the ones who don't team up are going to have a tougher time getting good talent, because I just believe that artists are going to be more and more choosy about touring in the future.
I do too. And it's going to be hard to drive 400 miles for that one gig.
Right. So that's going to be the emphasis of Listening Room Network over the next 6 to 12 months, is inspiring people. And, you know, some pockets will just be 2 gigs. Some pockets might be 3 or 4 gigs. I want to create this middle ground where we provide tools and opportunities for them to connect with each other and for them to lead, as opposed to being a top-down dictated circuit from, you know, from an administrator. So I want to empower the ones who want to do the work to be the connectors. And that's great. And you've always been a forward thinker for this platform. So I think whatever happens, you're going to be on the front line and trying to do it. Well, thanks. Yeah, I resisted. I mean, it's obvious I resisted the whole online. I didn't want to become an online streaming company. Several of the other house concert websites out there have done a great job of transitioning to that platform and doing ticketed shows and all that kind of stuff. And I'd like to find a partner for Listening Room Network, so that we can sort of add that on without becoming a tech company, because we're really a relationships company. So yeah, I wanted to stay true to what I think we do best, and I want to.
I think that's wise.
I want to solve the problems that the other ones aren't looking at.
A lot of artists, and including me, I've not streamed a lot, and to be honest, it's not that I had a problem connecting with the camera. It's just different.
Yeah.
And I'm streaming a lot now every day because my Kickstarter is live, and I'm trying to play more and push the Kickstarter thing. But I played for a group of 12 people 2 weeks ago around a patio fire. And it was something I hadn't done. I hadn't played since February.
Yeah.
And to actually see people's eyes and faces, it was just like golden. I'm like, oh my God, this is why we do it. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't forgotten, but that's what the house concert is like. You're not looking at a sea of faces. You're looking at faces. I mean, you know them, and you get to know them over a period of 30 minutes or 45 minutes. You're talking with them, and they're giving you feedback. And I'm thinking that outdoors is really a key for me. and it's going to be seasonal. If people can hold their shows outdoors and the weather's good and have spacing and people can wear a mask if they want to, let's do it. I've been asked to play indoors already in November. There's a basement place. I love this place. They usually hold 90 people. We're only going to have 30 people, and we're going to require masks. And first thing I'm asking is, what's your ventilation like?
Yeah.
So I think people that go to these things, they want to know what precautions are going to be made, even after a vaccine is in place. But I think outdoors, even now, if people are distanced and treat it like you're going to eat outdoors on a patio, you know, let's do it. Let's play.
A lot of hosts have individually sort of stepped up to that challenge, and, you know, they're building gazebos in their backyard, and they're, you know, redoing their backyards to, you know, have a cleaner path and cutting down branches and making their backyards safer and more appealing. So we're already seeing a lot of that, and I think it certainly bodes well for the future. I think especially if you're, you know, in advanced age and a little more at risk, outdoor shows certainly make more sense. So I think, that's the thing. It's the resiliency, robustness. You know, I've never been a fan of outdoor shows. I really like the added intimacy of indoor shows. It sounds better. You get a little more echo, a little more bounce. But we have to deal with the reality that we have.
We'll get there. We'll get back there.
Yeah,
it's going to take a while.
So I do believe that, you know, that's the thing, is house concerts will make us more resilient because, you know, they don't have to stay in business. They can just lead their lives during the pandemic. And then when they feel safe and comfortable enough to start hosting again, they can.
You're totally right about that. It is a venue that I think is fairly stable. You can kind of count on some house concert network being there. Because people want to play and people want to listen.
Yeah,
I think it's going to come back. We'll get there.
I mean, we're already getting there. I'm seeing the activity on the site. Since artists can list their live streams, it's been mostly live streams on my little dashboard. But every week I'm seeing a handful of actual real shows getting booked through the network. So it's there. I would expect a low response rate for now still, because there's still a good chunk of the hosts who've checked out. They're not going to do anything until there's a vaccine. There's maybe 20%, 30% of our hosts feel like they're just not going to do anything until there's a vaccine. But there's a good chunk who are putting their toe in the water, and there's some who've been going strong all summer long by doing outdoor shows, distanced and all that. So there's activity. I think it's increasing. I think it's going to continue to increase. And again, my goal is to really allow hosts and venues to work together, because we're at our core, we're a touring platform. House concerts make sense for touring. When you're playing house concerts in your town, which is really the best way to do it right now, because touring just doesn't work. But that said, when you think of the intangibles that house concerts offer, you know, free lodging, free food, and really a free audience, right? You can walk into a town that where you know nobody, and still have a financially good show, because the host has built an audience over time for what they do. They've built trust. So those things don't make as much sense when you're doing them locally. You don't need the free place to stay. You don't need the free food. You don't need the built-in audience when you're home. So those are the things that remind me that at our core, we're a touring company. We help artists tour.
Right.
And so that's what I want to stay focused on rather than live streams, realizing that we will find stuff to enable the combination of live streams and live shows, and that stuff's not going to go away. People aren't going to abandon live streams just because they tour again. Yep. But our core, we want to make it easier to tour.
Let me say one more thing. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. It's, this thing's been a passion of mine for a really, really long time. And I'm a bit of a contrarian. So the whole live stream thing just did not resonate with me in terms of a direction for our company, for what we want to do. Again, it's something that we can't ignore and we have to support it. But my focus is really going to stay on touring. How do we make it easier, more profitable, more interesting, more satisfying for artists to tour?
I'm with you on that, because when all this hit, I canceled a lot of gigs this year.
Yeah.
And I was starting to get momentum from last year's playing and whatever. And there's hundreds of people just like me. So you have to start thinking, well, will house concerts be there next year? Will this venue be there? Probably not. And my new album coming out, I had to postpone that 6 months. But when it comes out, will I be able to tour a little bit to support that? So people like you who are trying to keep it alive, I think you are keeping it alive. It will happen. It's just patience. We just have to have some patience and some pre-planning of what's gonna happen.
Yeah, there's definitely better days ahead for touring and music, and there's a lot of latent things that I think have been woken up by these challenges. So I think there's going to be a lot of great new opportunities for artists to make money from home, in addition to what they can do when they do find the right opportunities to go hit the road. And that's what we want to create. So, Rod, thanks so much for your time. I'll share the link.
You bet.
We'll share the link to your Kickstarter as well as your photography. I was really impressed. I didn't know about that side of you, but I love the little robots that you made out of found parts. That's really super cool. You got one?
Here's one right here.
That's great.
Yeah, you can find that on the Kickstarter site. I build these things all the time. It's stuff I found at flea markets on the road. And I've had friends go, why don't you let people know about that? So I'm letting people know about it.
Yeah, and the photography of those items was really cool.
Thanks. That Kickstarter goes until October 23rd, and there's all different pledge tiers. I'm excited about it. It's kind of a weird time to do a Kickstarter, but I thought there's not going to be an easy time.
Right. You just got to do it. So, Rod, wonderful to reconnect with you.
Thanks, Fran.
When we can meet up somewhere again.
Exactly. Take care, and everybody take care.
Thanks for listening to the Fran Snyder Podcast. Please subscribe, like, or share to help your friends discover this community. Also, I'd love to hear from you with any feedback or suggestions you have. And if you'd like to learn more about house concerts and listening rooms around the world, please visit and join listeningroomnetwork.com. You can email me from there. See you next time on the Fran Snyder Podcast.